Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Hemlane Hustle. I am so excited to share with you Tony Lopes, who is the CEO of Dirty Boots Capital. They help with not only you getting into real estate investing if you want to be an active investor, but they also offer syndication. But more importantly, what I want to talk about today is freedom. And this is really a trend that Tony has been passionate about. Tony has written a book on it called Freedom at Risk. And so today we're going to talk a little bit more about Tony's journey into real estate, how he was laid off at 30 and retired at 44 by investing in real estate. And then we're going to end it after we have a discussion on his career and where he went to find freedom, on happiness and what brings happiness. So Tony, from there, I would love to go ahead and get started. First, I want to talk about, you going into the workforce, starting your career and building it, and then giving it all up the day that you got laid off and what happened from there. So Tony, go ahead and give us an intro here.
Yeah, Dana, thank you so much for that fabulous intro. I hope I can live up to it. But this is going to be a fun conversation, and I think your audience is really going to love it. And I think resonate with a lot of my history because I'm no different than a lot of folks out there. I was given the mantra by my parents of who were immigrants, right? They came to this country with very little, and they saw the opportunity here. With the education system and whatnot. So they handed down the tablets of go to school, get a good education, you'll get a good job, and you'll have a good life. And I was a kid, I didn't know any better, so I said, okay, let me do that. My parents are telling me. So I went to school, I got a good education, I got 2 degrees, a bachelor's of mechanical engineering and an MBA, right? Two very good marketable degrees. Went to school, got an education, got a great job, and then I ended up getting laid off. And I was like, wait a minute, getting laid off, that wasn't part of the mantra that my parents shared with me. And so it really gave me pause at that point to really think about what I was doing and was I really achieving what I wanted to achieve. And so at that point, getting laid off, I was still young. I wasn't financially free, right? I didn't have my financial freedom at that point. So I said, I got to do a little different. I needed to go back to work, get a W-2 job, get that paycheck, which is fine. And I don't poo-poo people who have a paycheck, a W-2. I actually speak very highly about it because there's a lot of leverage you can get from that. And we can talk about that if you want. Um, but yeah, for me, I went back to find a job, which I did. But very shortly thereafter, I started saving my money, and I ended up buying a quad, a 4 unit building.
And Tony,
And
question for you on
yeah,
that. So when you were laid off, I mean, were you living paycheck to paycheck? If you don't mind me asking, did you have some money, saved up? And the reason that I ask is those looking to go into real estate, there's this a preconceived notion that you need a lot of money, a lot of capital, millions of dollars to start putting down payments down. And so given that you were laid off, you had no cash flow coming in every single month, and that you started to buy this fourplex, what was your financial situation there, just for others to be able to somehow compare their financial situation to yours?
yeah, yeah. No, that's a great question, Dana. Yeah, I was not wealthy, right? I did not have a bank account with a lot of zeros, right? And a lot of digits. I didn't. Um, but I did have a little bit of money saved up. So I was able to take a little bit of what I saved up and on that first quad that I purchased, I ended up doing a cash out refinance on the condo where I was living. And that's the thing that really helped me buy that first property. But after I bought that first property, like a lot of folks out there, they're like, okay, now I'm strapped. I did my cash out refinance. I bought my first property. How do I buy my second property? And this is where having a W-2 job is super helpful because a lot of folks out there have a 401k with
Mhm.
their job. And you can actually, and a lot of folks actually don't know, they can actually borrow, they can take a loan from their 401k to be able to, that loan creates potentially what you need for that down payment on the second uh, property, real estate investment that you make. So that's basically what I ended up doing. And then and I'm not saying taking money, taking a loan, and it's a loan from your 401k. I'm not saying that's the right decision for everybody. It was the right decision for me at that time and place, but everything's a case by case scenario. So for me, that was the right decision, and it allowed me to get into my second property, and it just kind of snowballed from there because I was cash flowing handsomely from those now two properties.
Yeah. And did you ever think of, I know there's with 401ks and then you also have your IRA or your IRAF, right? Did you ever think of a self-directed in that from that perspective too? Because I feel like that's something that a lot of investors don't know about, that you can actually use that money and put it to work. Was that something that you ever thought about?
I did. I never pulled the trigger on using a self-directed IRA. I know a lot of folks do it and are very successful at it. I just didn't end up going down that road, partially because after I bought my first couple of multifamilies, I ended up going into building some spec homes where I bought some land and I built a couple of spec homes and then ended up selling those. And that was a great experience building spec homes because it made me realize that, hey, I'm building these spec homes. Sure, I sell them and I get a nice chunk of cash, but I don't have cash flow. I have cash on that one day, and sure, it maybe goes into the next investment, but I don't have that, so to speak, that consistency of cash flow like I do with multifamilies. So, and that's something I really liked because we know that cash flow is what replaces the income each and every month from our W-2 jobs and allows us to get away, to retire from our W-2 jobs. And so that's where I ended up focusing. I refocused back on multifamilies after I sold my first two spec homes. I went back to focusing on multifamilies and just ever since have been investing in multifamilies. And that's what really having that cash flow allowed me to retire at 44.
Wow. And walk me through that journey of how quickly did you purchase property? So you started with your first four plaques, which was a cash out refinance from the condo you were living in.
Yeah.
How much longer did it take for you to purchase your next multifamily? And what was that progression so that by 44 you could retire? And the reason that I asked that is you have this capital from your condo that you could put into the down payment for the multifamily. But then getting the cash flow every month, it takes a little while to be able to build up enough,
Yeah.
especially if you're living off that, to buy your next multifamily. So walk me through what that looked like up until you were 44.
Yeah, again, another great question because I mean that's what we all go through. So for me, my journey, the bulk of it started after 2008. After the global financial crisis, there were, foreclosures, I was picking up for 50 cents on the dollar. Um, so but still, to your point, I wasn't cash flowing good enough to be able to have a nice big down payment I could put on the next property. So
Yep.
about every year, I was buying a property, right? It's not like I was buying a property every month. I was buying a property, about one property every year, adding that to my portfolio. And where that down payment came from, is a good question. And it's something I share with folks. And I got mine from a hard money lender.
Mm.
It was a friend of mine, somebody who knew me, who knew my integrity, who knew my work ethic, who knew what I was doing, and that this wasn't just like a fly by night operation. They knew my story, and so they really helped me with you know providing that down payment on the next and the next. And the thing that, I share with folks regarding hard money lenders, and for folks that aren't familiar, maybe some in your audience aren't familiar, hard money lenders, it's called hard money lending because the money they give you is based on a hard asset, the actual property, right? It's not hard because if you don't pay them, they're going to come after you hard and break your kneecaps. It's not like loan sharks or anything like that, right? It's hard money based on the actual asset. So I was so fortunate. This individual actually knew real estate, like a lot of hard money lenders do. And he I went through the numbers on a property I was going to purchase, and then he too went through the numbers on that property so that we were on the same page. And for me, I was still young, I was still learning. It was an education. So even if I was paying an extra point or two for this hard money, like a lot of folks get twisted around, oh gee, I'm going to have to pay an extra 2% interest on hard money. Yeah, but you're getting such an education from that hard money lender because they've done this time and time again. And oh, by the way, they want to make sure they don't lose their money. So they're going to make sure this deal that you're buying is going to cash flow well for you so that they can get paid. So the security and the education using a hard money lender is it shouldn't be overlooked for folks that need that down payment from somewhere. Look towards
I
a hard money lender that you can trust.
Yeah, I think that's such a valid point for those out there who are struggling to say, how am I going to purchase my next property? And I've always said, the most difficult part is just getting in, just diving into the deep end. And so really you figuring it out from there. How much do you think, I mean, this was back in 2008, 2009, you said, how much do you think the economy played a role? And what I mean by that is that obviously at that point, a lot of foreclosures and honestly, rental rates were increasing and property values were also increasing. You bought at probably a market low. How much do you think that you had luck based on the economy? And would you say the same is true today, now that we see quite the opposite, where interest rates are rising or fluctuating at a much higher price? We're not down at sub 3%, and then property values are still really high. How much do you think of that was luck? How much do you think the timing helped you? And would you repeat that same exact scenario today if you were in your shoes back then with a hard money lender in today's time?
So I'll kind of pick up on that a little bit. Um, So I know a lot of people are having difficulty purchasing multifamilies right now because of the higher interest rates and trying to get those properties to cash flow. But I was looking at, you know, I would say 100 properties every 2 weeks, just going through units, looking at the quality, trying to understand what the market was doing. So as real estate investors, we're never happy. I'll say, when interest rates are high, we want them to be lower. When interest rates are low, the prices are higher. So we're like, oh, we want interest rates to be higher because that'll bring the prices down. And so there's always this competition that we have in our heads on where the prices should be. So for young folks starting out today, I would say just and you said it, Dana, just do it. Just start. Just
Yeah.
buy your first one, figure that out, learn from your mistakes. And as long as the property is cash flowing, that's the biggest thing. Make sure you buy a cash flowing property and you should be okay. I know folks who are buying properties and they're just banking on the equity that's going to grow into the property over the next 5 years. And in the meantime, it's not cash flowing. And I'm like, oh, that's a recipe for disaster there. Because say your property tax goes up, or your insurance goes up, or you lose a tenant for a couple of months, or you have a water pipe burst, you have no residual cash flow to support those surprise increases. So as long as you're buying property that cash flows, you're probably in a good situation.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Don't bank on appreciation. Cash flow is the way to go. Tony, this is amazing to hear about your background. I want to switch this over to the economy in general and this renter nation. So I'd love to hear from you about what trends you're seeing and where you see the market going in rentals. You obviously seem very bullish on the buy and hold strategy of rentals.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing there.
Yeah, I'll share. I still have that same very first quad that I bought many, many years ago. I never sold it. So I'm very much buy and hold. I'm very much, as you say, bullish on the rental market. There's a couple of things going on regarding Renter Nation. For folks who might not understand that term, we, the United States, is becoming slowly more and more a nation of renters versus owners of a home. So the rental market is just growing and growing. And there's a couple of things where we see that happening. So I'm going to go back to what's just happened over the last 3 years with during the pandemic and even after the pandemic, the federal government spent a lot of money, trillions and trillions of dollars uh, post post pandemic, and that's money that was borrowed by the federal government. Now that there's interest on that money that was borrowed. There's interest that needs to be paid back each and every day. And so what ends up happening, because we have such a high debt and a high interest, higher interest today than we've ever had, that needs to be paid back. That interest ends up being that what we pay back for interest at the federal government level, that's less money that's available to go to the states and to the towns, right? So what ends up happening at the state and the town level is they got to figure out how to cover that shortfall, right? If they're not getting as much from the federal government, because the federal government has to pay more interest on the
Yep.
federal debt, the states and the cities and towns have to figure out how do they make up that shortfall. And to a large degree, where it's coming from, and we're already seeing this, it comes from property tax.
Yep.
And so there's a huge affordability issue today because of higher interest rates and just the cost to build, right? Construction materials, everything has been inflated. So there's an affordability issue there. But even if there wasn't, I stress that there would be an affordability issue because of property tax. Property taxes continue to go up and up and up because the towns and the cities and the states need to make up for the shortfall from what they're not getting from the federal government. So that affordability crisis will continue. Even if interest rates come back to 5% or 4%, we're still going to be in an affordability issue. Those folks who can't afford to buy because of whether it's interest rates are still too high for them, or the cost of insurance is too high for them because insurance has been going up like crazy. Those of us who own properties know this, and the property taxes have been going up. Um, these folks still aren't going to be able to buy. So they're going to be renters and they're going to be renters for longer. So there's things within the politics and the government that's happening that's creating more and more of a renter nation, but also within society itself, we ourselves aren't doing ourselves any favors, right? We have, you know, a society that no longer wants to go to the grocery store. They use Instacart. And I'm not casting dispersions or stones or anything. It is what it is. I mean, I'm okay with that. I've used Uber Eats a handful of time myself, right? But, you know, folks don't want to go to the grocery store. They use Uber Eats and DoorDash and things like that to get the prepared food delivered to their homes. Do you think these are folks who actually want to spend their weekends mowing the lawn and painting the trim and cleaning the gutters? Society isn't there anymore. Society is drifting more towards wanting experiences. So, all these things that are happening within society, where things are at our fingertips, like Amazon, we want a package, we order it, we get it the next day. This instant gratification.
Mhm.
All these things are driving us away from home ownership and more towards being a renter and having different experiences.
And how do you think of property taxes for your cash flow? So obviously with property taxes increasing on your investments themselves, how do you think about that as well? And do you think folks could get in trouble potentially if they buy a property that just barely cash flows and then suddenly with property taxes and everything else, it's not as attractive as they thought it was?
Yeah, I see it happening. I belong to a couple different Facebook groups, and I see uh, a couple a week. I'll see a post where people are like, oh, my mortgage bill just went up $600. I don't know why, and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, I know why, because 'tis the season for these mortgages to re-rate at the beginning of the year. What the payment should be based on property taxes in 2023 being adjusted. So I've seen it with mine. Everybody else is seeing it with theirs, and it's showing up on Facebook where people are saying my mortgage bill went up $600. I don't know why. And yeah, it's happening. And they don't have the excess cash flow to cover that increase. And so this is where I go back to, like, if you're a newbie with doing some of this stuff, you know, this is where using a hard money lender, and I'm not a hard money lender, right? So I'm not pushing that angle, but I'm just pushing it from the perspective of knowing I've used them and they offer a wealth of education, and
Yeah.
make sure you don't get into those problems.
Yeah, definitely. So how can folks get involved? How can they get their freedom? Walk me through a little bit more about how those who are listening can get started.
Yeah, so it's all about buying your first one, buy your first property, make sure it cash flows, and then from there work towards buying your second and your third. And it doesn't have to be a marathon. I know there's folks out there who are super hungry and they're buying like it seems like one property every month. Don't chase their dream. Chase your dream. Okay? And maybe that's a quote I should put
Yeah.
on a banner
For your
somewhere.
next book, after
I like that.
Freedom at Risk V2, you can the
Yeah. Yeah, so many people are like chasing somebody else's dream, and it's like, yeah, figure out what your goal is. If you have to replace your monthly income of, say, 5,000 a month, if that's what you make is 5,000 a month, you got to get to enough cash flowing properties where you have at least cash flow of $5,000 a month, maybe a little extra to support any surprises along the way, right? That's your goal. That's your challenge, and work towards that. Don't work towards somebody else's. My goals and my challenges are very different than a lot of other people, so nobody should be working towards, trying to achieve mine. So really, that's one thing people need to look at. The other thing is, one thing I see with folks is they start buying real estate and then they get all consumed in, like, fixing everything to save on cost sometimes, right? To save on cost because they didn't buy it right. They got into trouble. So now they have to do all the turnovers themselves. They're ripping out carpet. They're doing, oh God, I see some doing electrical work and they're not even licensed. And there's all sorts of things that I see. And it's like, we buy real estate to have greater freedom in our life, right? That's what we want. That's why we're buying real estate. We're not buying real estate to create all this extra work for ourselves on the weekends and nights, and essentially creating a second W-2 job for ourselves. We don't want real estate to be a W-2 job. We want real estate to be the vehicle to having greater freedoms in our lives. And so that's where, I'm fortunate, I have you folks there at Hemlane watching my back when I have, service work orders put in. It comes directly in through Hemlane, and you guys take care of it. And I'm so grateful, and I appreciate you guys taking care of that. And I share that with folks, whether it's Hemlane or somebody else. Have somebody in front of that. It looks more professional to your tenants, number
Yes,
one, rather than calling the landlord who's going to maybe be like, hubbada, 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 I got to go find a contractor, right? That's the first thing. It looks more professional. Second, it gets you out of that having real estate be like your second W-2 job. Treat real estate as the vehicle to get more freedom in your life, not to be working more hours.
I love it. Let's talk about happiness. My favorite topic here that we
Yeah.
have, your return on life. And so instead of ROI, return on investment, it's ROL, right? Return
Yeah.
on life. Walk me through a little bit about how you define happiness, how you think of happiness, and with others, maybe some stories about those who've gone from a very unhappy life to a happy life.
Yeah. So for me, all I can really speak is to my experiences, and I was I was pretty much I started out. I'll share it in like four levels of being, I guess. The first level is just survivor. You try to make enough money to pay your bills to survive. to be able to put gas in the car. And a lot of us understand that survivor mode. The next level, is success. You achieve some sort of success in your life. Maybe you have real estate. Maybe you work in your W-2 job, but you also have some real estate and you're able to go on some nice vacations and you can buy some nice cars, maybe a new car every once in a while. You have success, right? And then you have, the third step of having a life of significance. You've achieved success, and that's great. But now you want to have a life of significance. You want to be able to give back more, maybe to your family, maybe to your community, maybe to your environment, whatever it is. You want to have a life of significance. And then the fourth and the last is a life of legacy, where you're creating legacy either in you or outwardly for your family, a legacy there. So for me, I was the survivor. I get it. I know when I do coaching and I hear folks tell me about their struggles, been there, done that. I get it. I was no different. When we talk about success, yeah, I've had a certain amount of success and I'm proud of it. And yeah, I've since moved towards that over the last 4 or 5 years. I've been in this creating a life of significance, right? It's less about me. My success, I've already guaranteed my success. I know how to do it. It's, done, right? And that's not to be braggadocious. It's just to kind of share where I am in this process. I'm at that creating a life of significance for myself so I can take what I've learned and share it with others, my family, my community, through the work I do, through my speaking that I do, to be able to share with others, to be able to have a moment with them so they can realize this is doable. I'm not special. I'm not the smartest one in the class. It took me this many fingers to make it through college, 5 years to get my engineering degree. So I'm not the smartest one, right? And if I can do this, anybody can do it. So now I'm at that life of significance, really impressing upon others that they can do this. And then the last stage is legacy, working on my legacy that I'm going to leave to the world. So yeah, that's kind of where I am. I don't know if that answered your question. I hope it does, but that's where I'm at.
That does, that does. And I'll leave everyone today with, if you find yourself right now in a place where you aren't happy, go ahead and get the book Freedom at Risk. It's Tony Lopes' book. You can buy it on Amazon. We'll have a link as well in this video. But go ahead and buy Freedom at Risk and change your life. We learned everything today, from using hard money lenders to sometimes the worst things that happen, such as a layoff, are the best things that help change your career trajectory, which I know, given the market today, there's a lot of layoffs going on. And so very topical, very timely. Thank you so much, Tony, for joining us today, and really look forward to seeing you grow your portfolio and leaving your legacy as well.
Thank you, Dana. This has been a lot of fun, and hopefully I've added a lot of value for your audience to walk away with and kind of think through their next steps.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.